Aye.
I don't know if I'm supposed to be this way or the other way.
Jerry Mallard, 6106 Lincoln Road again. As the board knows, I sent a list of questions shortly after the last board meeting. I want to thank, I did get a lot of responses. I'm not sure I got a lot of answers. What I got was a lot of direction to existing documents, and I am going to take the filibuster routine for 2.5 of my 3 minutes. One of the questions I had was the district's adopting a policy to address the external auditor's recommendations. What I was told is that that is a New York State policy, that we have to do that. So in the multitude of documents I got, I just would like to read two quotes. The external auditor's report dated October 10th, 2012 stated, quote, noted purchase orders from last year which totaled approximately $659,000, which appeared to be liquidated during 2011-2012, for which no purchase was made. We recommend that the district make every effort to only encumber funds that are going to be used within the ensuing fiscal year. Pretty straightforward recommendation. The corrective answer response. The district has carried over funds for technology purchases at year-end for the last 2 years. This has allowed the district to reduce the line item budget for technology purchase for the last 2 years. This has been necessary to offset large state aid reductions over the last 2 years. Doesn't answer the question or address the recommendation of not liquidating POs with no purchases against them. It was a statement of what our policy or what our actions were. It wasn't a corrective action. Observation from the Office of the State Controller report. District officials should not create fictitious encumbrances and should ensure that year-end encumbrances are valid and supported. The initial response from this board was, managing fund balance at year-end is an important resource to school districts during troubled financial times. Doesn't again address the issue of fake encumbrances. It was a statement of what this board was trying to accomplish. Based on those two, in the last 3 years, between the Office of the State Controller and the External Auditor, we have totaled $3.8 million worth of encumbrances that were not closed out at year-end. That was strictly under this administration. It's not something we inherited. It's not something was carried over. It's what this board and this administration has done. All of the responses to the auditors start with the statement, and I quote, the district is pleased that the OSC draft report does not suggest any malfeasance or legal impropriety with respect to our general business operations. I would take offense to that. I think what the report does not do is accuse anybody of malfeasance. It certainly does suggest it. 2 quotes again from the report. The Assistant Superintendent for Business, with the board's approval, deliberately ignored the external auditor's recommendations. Second one, recording entries for encumbrances that do not exist is clearly unethical and should not be tolerated by the board. It speaks to what we're trying to accomplish here and what the policy of this board is. So tying into the finance question that came up, my requests are, and I heard there was a report for the June closeout report for POs that had all of the POs that will be encumbrances. Can that be made available to the public and to this board? And as a matter of control, can we provide quarterly reports of spending against those POs so that we understand when they're closed out early, what happens to those funds, and whether the encumbrances were valid. And lastly, there was in the final corrective action plan, said that the district will ensure that all encumbrances are supported with the appropriate documentation to validate the expenditure. I assume, and who is responsible was all of the district employees associated with the purchasing process. Are they going to be trained on what constitutes appropriate documentation? And how is it going to be rolled out? Is there going to be training? And from an oversight perspective, again, it talks about providing the documentation for the encumbrances It doesn't talk about corrective action and follow-up after the fact.
Okay, very good, thank you. The reminder.
A reminder,
I didn't say it, a reminder in writing, because I'm sure that not everyone caught all of that. All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, any other public comments?
Thank you. Congratulations to 3 new board members. It strikes me as strange that I had a hand in each of your education, and maybe we should hold that against you. My name is Ron. My address is 2044 Brooklake Crescent. I've attended a few board meetings and have heard board members address their desire to have community members ask them questions. And so after the last board meeting, I emailed 3 board members with questions. I did not receive the courtesy of a response. Let me also assure this board that they were not questions that the majority of the board would need to discuss to plan a response. Mrs. Moore, I was not at the meeting when you spoke about the academic achievement of Wayne students and our ranking as a school district. My email to you asked you for a copy of the research that you had compiled on ranking Wayne Central and would have come from you as a citizen rather than as a board presentation. Could I get a copy of that research? Mr. Schultz, I emailed you twice asking you for a copy of your remarks under the portion of the meeting board president comments. I believe during your remarks that you said you were reading from a script because at one point you mentioned departing from the script. Could you supply me a copy of your remarks? Mr. Paz, I emailed you about your response to a communication from Mrs. Swanson. In that communication, you stated that Wayne Central was rated 13th in the state as far as educational achievement. Could you give me the source as well as the metrics of that ranking? You also called the audit a hiccup, a philosophical difference between the governor's plan and ours, and that no unethical practices took place. Is that an accurate presentation of your response to Mrs. Swanson? I would be curious if your beliefs were based on first-hand knowledge from reading the audits. I have read West Arundequay Schools, Churchville Chi-Life, and Dundee. All 3 share some commonality with Wayne Central, except for the language used by the state in their report. We find that the Board of Education and district officials have not fulfilled their fiduciary responsibility. In routinely using inappropriate practices, district officials have in effect circumvented the 4% fund balance. District officials consistently presented and the board consistently approved misleading and inaccurate budgets. The materiality of the invalid POs encumbered at year-end makes clear the district's intent to inflate and mask a true financial position and plans. The Assistant Superintendent for Business, with the board's approval, deliberately ignored the external auditor's recommendations and continued to record fictitious encumbrances. When the board's intent was to use tactics to keep more funds than state regulations permit, and that it was deliberate and against the advice of the external auditor, and the state describes it as circumventing, misleading, inappropriate, inaccurate, masking, fictitious, how can these budget decisions be ethical? If it wasn't unethical, why has the district determined to not use fake encumbrances in the future? Has this board ever established, or does the state allow a reserve fund called an encumbrance reserve? In a budget PowerPoint presentation March 10, 2011, there was a slide that presented an encumbrance reserve with a balance of $2,401,345 as of June 30th, 2010. How is it ethical to present having money in a reserve that cannot exist? The board talks a lot about tax rates being flat or declining during the time of the audit. That is possible only because assessments of the Wayne Central community have gone up. What was the assessed value of Wayne Central's tax base when the audit began? And what is the assessed value today? I look forward to receiving a response to my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Any other comments? Any other public comments? We have time for one more. All right, very good. Board member comments. Do I have any?
So I actually have two comments. One is, for the gentleman that was just talking about having sent me an email, I apologize. I checked my email as recently as 20 minutes before this meeting started, and I have not seen it. I probably missed it in the pile of email that's going back and forth.
I will send you another copy of it.
Okay, because if you send me your address, I'll be happy to send you not only where I got the information, but I'll actually send you the copies of what I printed out, which I had offered to some people after the meeting
Okay.
when I presented the data.
It's REMWCS, Wayne Central Schools. I can still keep that at AOL.
Okay. And what I can do actually is, well, it's an awful lot of pages. I don't know if you want me to scan it in and send it to you, but the website that I pulled all of it from is called businessfirst.com, and it's out of Buffalo.
Thank you.
The other comment, and, please, Greg, stop me if I get this wrong, is I think the board has mentioned several times, and I'll speak for myself personally, that there will absolutely be no more encumbrances that were handled the way that the encumbrances were handled that were commented on in the auditor's report. I know that individuals have had that response in the email. I know that we've mentioned it in board meetings, and I may be wrong, but I believe it was also addressed in the corrective action report that we sent to the comptroller's office. I would also note that there is a difference between the response to the comptroller's report and the corrective action plan to the comptroller's report. So you will not find corrective action in the response, but you will find corrective action in the corrective action plan, which is a different document. There was one other comment on that I wanted to, I can't remember, and I didn't write it down, but I have told many people when I've talked to them in private, I think every single person on this board would tell you that we are fully committed to not doing any encumbrances in the way that the state comptroller's office said was inappropriate. Oh, I know what the other one was. When you look at, as Greg mentioned earlier, when you look at that PO report, there will be open POs at the end of a year. We don't close everyone at the end of the year because we don't receive everything by the end of the year, and we're not going to pay anybody until we receive what we've asked them to send us on the PO. And those dollars are carried over to the next year. So the fact that a PO isn't closed at the end of the year doesn't mean that anything wrong has been done. It means we haven't received it. So that is not what the comptroller was concerned about in his report. It was something completely different, where a PO had been written for item A, and item A was never received. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Deb?
I just wanted to kind of tag on to the workshop idea that we've discussed. And I guess I'm just going to throw out there a request that, the September one for financial, school finances. I think that's a great idea. I would like to make a request that the next one or two after that be education-based. I think that as a young board, we need to have a very good understanding of Common Core. Took some notes here. We need to learn about distance learning, because that's where education is headed. Individualized learning, there's a lot of, you have to teach, every child has a right to the education. So individualized learning, and even maybe one on special ed or something. But I'd like to try to, and I don't want this to sound like one thing is more important than the other, but I just like to remind people that we're here to educate our students. And, the financial part is certainly important. I'm not trying to diminish that. I'm trying to also just impress that the educational programs that we have, we need to keep, and if we can add, we should add, because that's our main role here is providing a good education for our kids.
Thank you, Carl.
I know that in some districts on a yearly or every 2-year, 3-year, there's a climate survey done. And we have a new board, and we have a lot going on in our schools with APPR, with trying to maintain programs, and trying to be a little more transparent with the public, and I hope the public has seen a few changes just tonight. But I'd also like to survey the people who really matter to our children, and that's our staff, our teachers, and our support staff, and to see where they feel our struggles are, where our strengths are, what direction they feel the board could help them take, and what improvements they would like to see. I've spoken to some teachers prior to coming on the board, and most of them are, it's not about their contract, it's about the feelings and respect, and in order to have productive students, we have to have teachers who want to get up and come to work. And I know in my own district, we've done a climate survey, and it's completely anonymous, and I would like our board to discuss at some point having a climate survey done for the entire district and having the results come back to the board.
Anyone else? Carla, I'm just gonna ask some questions on that, just for some clarification. You said a climate survey. I have just some questions on that. Who do you want to survey? The staff of the district?
Yes.
And you mean the teachers, or you mean?
Teachers, support staff.
Okay, everyone.
It goes, in my own personal district, it goes to everyone.
Okay, including, so all 5 schools,
Yes.
teachers, staff, support staff?
Yes. And then you identify issues that are important to one building over another, one group of people over another, and you work toward knowing. It's anonymous, people are honest, the results are extrapolated and disseminated and given back to whoever is requesting it. And there are various companies that do this. It's usually done on the internet. The employees get something and they return it, just like we did that survey too.
Right.
It's done similarly to that. You have to have open dialogue, not only with the public, but you have to have open dialogue with your staff. And I think that's a place to start.
Okay, no, I appreciate the clarity. I only asked because I just didn't want to work for the exact same reason. Our company was bought out by another company, and the company that bought us sent out a similar type survey, it sounds like, so.
There are many organizations that do it. There's some BOCES. There's, I think Fort County does something. There's an elementary group. There's a high school. I just would like to open that up and maybe look and see what companies and present that back to all of you as